Good morning, Grassroots. It's really good to be with you in this way today on one of my final weeks with you as your shepherd. And really, we might say that it's one of my final weeks with you as your under shepherd, because Jesus tells us that he is the great shepherd who knows his sheep, who will take care of them, who will feed them and protect them. And he also promises that he will be with us unto the very end of the age. And so this is a great promise that today as we begin transitioning in this church. We cannot go far enough in this world to where God is not. His presence will and his spirit can be found anywhere we go. And so as we go, as the Jaggers go to a new station in Arkansas, I'm so comforted and assured that the Lord is with you and he will be guiding you. And the great leader of God's people will remain with you as we leave. And God has gifted this particular church with a wonderful set of leaders. Your board, your staff, your leaders of the church are with you and ready to lead the church forward. I love the fact that the board is leading you all through a season of prayer. If you haven't seen that on Facebook or heard the announcements yet, continue to stay tuned to your newsletters or communications from your group leaders. The board is asking everyone in the church to pray through this season. And so what that means is that take a half hour on your own once a week. Do it every day if you can. Just find a half hour every week to pray for the church, to pray for the transition as the Lord guides Grassroots forward. Every Friday morning at 8 a.m. there'll be a Zoom prayer gathering, which will be devoted to praying for the church in this time of transition. And so, again, stay tuned to the newsletter from your in your email accounts, from your notes from your home group leaders. You'll be able to link into all of that. Well, that's that. So let's turn our attention today to the scriptures which you will be reading, that will be in for the next many weeks, running up to the final week of May. So that last week of May, again, will be a large group gathering, and hopefully we can be together for that. Today, the reading is from Matthew chapter 23, and these are some of Jesus's final words during his final week before the road up to the cross and to Golgotha and to his resurrection. And you see that in your reading there are a few points of ellipses, or the three little dots, which means that this whole section of Jesus's teaching is a little too long to do in a prayerful way in a group. So we've chosen a few selections, and if you want to go back and read Matthew chapter 23 on your own this week, I encourage you to. But this whole section is a section of Jesus speaking strongly. He's not holding back any verbal punches here in his strong words to the religious leaders. So we've highlighted a few of these teachings today, and Jesus really here is concerned with spiritual people who may think that God is only interested in how we appear on the outside to ourselves and to others, and that's as if the nice religious words that we can say somehow outweigh what's really happening in the deeper parts of our hearts. And really, there are all sorts of people that fall in this category. You have religious leaders who end up living secret lives, which is not a shock to Jesus. You have followers of God who know how to speak religiously when the time is right, but they're really living double lives, and maybe even they're lying to themselves about what they are or who they are or what they really care about. Or you also have scoundrels, I call them scoundrels, who are people who know how to use religious language but are out to oppress the poor and to wear religion on their cloak. None of these kinds of people are surprises to Jesus, and he's going to speak strongly. He wants to be sure that as he leaves, that he's going to call this behavior out. That although he's going to let these very people kill him in a few days, it's not as if the wool is over his eyes. He not only sees that this is happening in his own world, but he is willing to die for it and die for them because his heart is about rescue for all who are willing. And so he begins with this in chapter 23. The scribes, or this is the beginning of his teaching, the scribes and the Pharisees, the religious leaders, sit on Moses' seat, which means they are the people who are supposed to share God's own heart, which God gave to Moses and passed down through the generations. Jesus says, do whatever they teach and follow it. But do not do as they do, for they do not practice what they teach. And Jesus will go on to call them hypocrites, children of hell, blind guides, blind fools, and people who are like tombs which have bones of the dead, which means they're filled with hypocrisy and filled with wickedness. And he calls them prophet murderers. These are some strong words which, as we see from verses 37 through 39, which is the last part of your reason, we see that Jesus speaks so strongly out of a place of compassion, deep compassion. These are words of teaching from a rescuer who is about to blow a hole in the systems of evil and slavery which are enslaving the world, which hold humanity in their grasp. But the same slave systems that are propped up by religious leaders as much as anything else. And he sees them, as he says, as children. I want to cover you with the wings like a mother hen might cover you. You are my children. You are God's children who are worthy of a rescue, but will refuse it because they would rather stay locked up in sin and evil and find their ways to the top of the slavery food chain than to taste real freedom. And you can imagine Jesus' frustration about his children who would rather be slaves than to taste true freedom. And although it may feel like it to them, to the religious leaders especially, God is not out to kill them. He's out to rescue them, to protect them from their house, as Jesus says, from being ruined. So you can dig in today. My takeaway, the things that's really struck me today is not simply that we probably all do have anger towards religious pretenders, but the invitation really is not to go out and throw stones right away at religious leaders. Jesus actually tells us to listen to their teachings, that there's some merit to the truth that they may be preaching. But the invitation really is to drive us all towards humility, which is the key of this verse. Jesus is saying those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. And this is the trick. This is the key to all of us who have a bit of religious spirit in us, a little bit of hypocrisy in us. How many people today have a little hypocrisy in them? The point is not to beat ourselves up or to think that we are irredeemable. What the point is to find the way of humility, which allows God not just to paint the outsides of us with purity, but to paint the insides of us with purity. And not just that, but he'll come in and he says, like a tomb, like the inside tomb of our life, he's not just going to paint that over with purity. He is going to do some resurrecting of bones inside of us. It's a great promise today. So my invitation to you guys today, as you learn, as Jesus will say here, to hold justice and mercy together in harmony, not emphasizing one or the other of those two, that we find our way towards humility today. And in the way of humility, we will discover that we are deeply, deeply loved, children of God who are worthy of a rescue. All right, friends, blessings today. Happy reading. May the Lord be with you. Amen.